Hi, welcome to the virtual gallery talk for the Artists Off-Grid exhibition at the Abend Gallery in Denver, Colorado, curated by Caitlin Hurd, founder and director of the Artists Off-Grid exhibition and residency program in Northern Colorado. We are glad you are here. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, which has caused us all to stay home across the United States, we find ourselves, like many artists and creative enterprises, no longer being able to share our work in person, but instead online. So our opening reception and the gallery, instead of opening its doors, we are bringing the show to you virtually through this webinar forum. Each gallery talk, we will be inviting different artists from the exhibition to talk about their experience while on the Artists Off-Grid residency, as well as their artistic process and concepts. A couple of things about Zoom. You'll find at the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A button. I invite you all to use it. Feel free to type in your questions at any time, and we will do our best to answer them towards the end. Artists Off-Grid is an independent artist residency program centered in the visual arts, located just outside Red Feather Lakes, Colorado. Off the grid and in the wild, artists experience nature as they create outside for 2 weeks in July. Each day required attention to meet basic needs for shelter and food. As we worked together to meet these needs, we built a community. Critiques were held every few days to discuss process as each artist explored the landscape in their own visual language. During these 2 weeks, we disentangled from our technology, we slowed down and simplified, and we focused on art making. The culmination of this residency was this exhibition at Abend Gallery in Denver, Colorado, up now, and you can view the show at the Abend Gallery website. Residents were asked to produce work following the residency informed by their experience, which is included in the exhibition. I'd like to introduce our moderator for tonight, Kim Power. Kim Power is a painter, a writer, a curator, and a teacher. Kim has moderated panels for Nora Haim Gallery, the Lodge Gallery, and the Shirley Fitterman Art Center in New York City. She's written for the Brooklyn Rail, Art Pulse, Art Aesthetics Magazine, Art Fuse, The Blue Review, and Quantum Art Review. She has curated and co-curated exhibitions in New York City and the Netherlands. She teaches art criticism, design, and drawing at the New Jersey City University and freelances creating essays for exhibition catalogs, artist monographs, and other professional writing for artists. Over to you, Kim.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the fourth and sadly the last, but perhaps not the last. We'll see what happens in the future. Virtual gallery talk featuring artists included in the Artists Off the Grid exhibition at Abend Gallery, currently online. I'm excited to introduce to you not only two talented artists, Hannah Moghbel and Kirsten Savage, included in the exhibition with whom I shared the residency, but also the founder of the Artists Off-Grid residency, artist Caitlin Hurd. As a side note, as Karis just mentioned, if you, the audience, have any questions for the artists that arise while we are speaking, please feel free to write them in the Q&A by tapping the icon at the bottom of your screen. We will try and address as many of the questions as we can at the end of the panel talk. And now, without further ado, I shall introduce our intrepid artists. Caitlin Hurd was born in Massachusetts. Hurd grew up in the suburbs north of Boston. In 2000, she received a BFA in furniture design from the Minneapolis College of Art and Design. She went on to lead school-age children in the creation of public murals for their communities. In 2006, she graduated with an MFA in painting from the New York Academy of Art. Hurd is the founder of the Artists Off-Grid residency. She is also the founder of Spark Portraits, where she paints commissioned oil portraits from photographs. Currently, she lives and works in Western Massachusetts. Her artwork has been the subject of numerous solo and major group exhibitions and is represented in galleries in New York City, St. Bart's, and California, as well as prestigious private and corporate collections, including Howard Tolman and Dasha Zukova. Hannah Moghbel. She grew up as a German-Iranian immigrant in a small village in the Appalachian Mountains of Pennsylvania. She graduated from Shepherd University in 2007 with a BA in art education. Her work explores themes of lust, love, and feminine identity through detailed representational paintings. For over a decade, she's explored fruit as an allegory for romantic longing and the nature of infatuation. In Artists Off-Grid, she turns her attention to Colorado's local flowers and pollinators. She currently lives and works in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Welcome, Hannah.
Thank you.
And last but not least, Kirsten Savage is one of Northern Colorado's top representational artists, best known for her conceptual figurative oil paintings and landscapes of the Southwest. After graduating from Maryland Institute College of Art, Kirsten moved from Baltimore to Colorado, where she found her love for the outdoors while leading trail crews on Rocky Mountain's 14,000-foot peaks. She now backpacks all over high alpine country and Southwest desert to seek inspiration in her artwork. Welcome, Kirsten.
Thank you, Kim.
I'm going to ask questions of each of you and also as a group, but first I'd like to hear from Caitlin about the residency. Caitlin, how did Artists Off-Grid come about, and why did you choose the Red Feather Lakes District for your project?
Well, I started with my mother-in-law had a plan to move out there, retire out there. She wanted to build a cabin and dig a well and get some electricity, and this is her home where she was going to retire. About 10 years ago, she had a car accident and was paralyzed from the chest down. And after a while, she wanted us to, my husband and I, to do something with it. And so I wanted to go out there, and my husband couldn't take off enough time to really go out there and fix things up and go out there. So I started inviting other artist friends to go out and paint with me. And then I talked with my friend Dina Brodsky, and she said, how about you make this into a show if you're going to have painters go out there? And she introduced me to Dave Etheridge, and I told Dave my concept, and he was excited and he wanted to show the work. So that's where it kind of all started. And then the second year, I opened it up to applications from artists from everywhere. So
That sounds great. Wow. What a great endeavor this is. And I'm sure that your mother-in-law really appreciates that you are using the land in that way. How did you go about choosing the artists that you included in the residency?
Well, the first year it was just inviting people I knew who could camp and go out there. And that's how I met Kirsten, through Dave that introduced me to her. And the second year I had built a website and invited people to apply. So going through the application process, I basically looked at the work that I thought that I liked and would go good together. And then I did an extensive interview process because we're out on the land, and I brought my family with me. And so I wanted to make sure that everyone would work well together. And we're really relying on each other to, be out in the wild and just kind of be safe together. So after interviewing people, then I had a really tough decision because I found a bunch of people I liked. And then based on that, I had to choose all the work that would go well together in the exhibition, kind of thinking about what they would do for the exhibition after the fact. So.
Well, great. I'm glad that you chose the people that you did. I had such a wonderful time with them, and I felt like seeing all the work together, it made so much sense about your choices. Kirsten, I remember that you aren't originally from Colorado, but that you have extensive knowledge of the Rocky Mountains and the flora and fauna that can be experienced there. Can you give me some insight as to what brought you to Colorado after your graduation from the Maryland Institute College of Art, and how the change in landscape affected your art practice?
Yeah, I grew up in Maryland in the suburbs right outside of Baltimore, and I ended up getting an in-state scholarship, so I went to college right in the heart of Baltimore City. And right before I graduated, my roommate had come out here to Colorado, and she came back with all these absolutely beautiful pictures. And we both grown up in Maryland our whole lives, and we were like, I just kind of want to try something new. And so we packed up our U-Haul and we drove 1,500 miles away from everyone we knew and loved, and started to explore the Southwest. So this was a landscape unlike anything I'd ever seen before. It almost felt like a whole different planet, especially in southern Utah with this red rock. I was just really excited to explore, but I honestly had absolutely no idea what I was doing at the beginning. I did minimal camping as a little kid. And so when I first moved to Colorado, I saw a job posting by a nonprofit called Colorado 14ers Initiative. And they basically do trail work above tree line. And so that's all 54 mountains in Colorado that are all above 14,000 feet. So I lied about that, said that I had trail experience. I didn't. And I miraculously got this job with CFI. And it turned out to be like manual labor with very little oxygen. But it was also this beautiful crash course in mountaineering for me. And I had a great crew of friends that really showed me the ropes. So I did that for 3 years, and the morning commute was amazing. You know, every day I'm like hiking a mountain, and I really just got this incredible love for Colorado through that job, and a love for outdoors and backpacking. And I met a friend when I was out here named Dave Santianis, who's this absolutely incredible plein air painter. And he was a former wildland firefighter, and now he's an amazing artist. And so we would go out, he would drag me out into all types of weather, snow and rain, and we had a lot of fun together. I also joke he's like the magnet for large wildlife. Every time it rains, elk would come up and attack his easel or something like that. And we formed a fake organization called BAPA, Badass Painters of America, from all the adventures that we've had. So
Awesome.
I just love this expanse of space in Colorado, and I'd never even painted a landscape until I came here. So all of a sudden, these big skies that I'm experiencing, just really, I found them so inspiring. And so it really started to change my artwork. And all of a sudden, I was painting all these big open expanses of space where that beautiful sky of Colorado really humbles us.
Awesome. That's, yeah, I definitely felt the same way when I arrived. If I was living there, I'd be taking the same advantage that you took of it. It's such a fun story to hear about how you started out, though, with all the exploration of those high altitudes and not knowing what you were doing at first.
No clue, no idea.
Oh my God. Hannah, you're also a transplant to Colorado. Can you tell me what brought you to Colorado Springs? And did you have any previous experience camping before attending the Artist Off-Grid residency?
I did. So I grew up in southern Pennsylvania with the Appalachian Trail in my backyard. So I had quite a bit of experience outdoors, camping and backpacking. But this was my first time really camping in Colorado. So I was really excited when I saw this residency opportunity. I saw as an opportunity to spend time out in nature and to experience camping with the idea of it being maybe a safe environment, you know, having more people around, because the elements in Colorado are a little bit more intense and the wildlife is a little more intense than back home. And yeah, so I came out here in also 2014 to be close to my grandma. So I've been out here for almost 6 years now.
Oh, wow. Amazing. What method did you use to capture the flora you so beautifully represented in your paintings in the exhibition, such as I Want to Do With You What Spring Does with the Cherry Trees? And where did you come up with such an intriguing title?
Thank you. So I primarily work from photo, and before doing the paintings for this series, I'd been doing fruit paintings, and I pretty much was taking photos through a macro lens, or taking very up close photos. So I just kind of did the same thing for the images in this residency. I just took walks and looked at flowers up close from an up close perspective. And my original idea was just to do flowers, but when I got up close to take the photos, I saw that most of the flowers were covered in insects, whether they were bees or spiders or other bugs. And I found that really interesting. So I included some of those in my paintings as well. And that last title, so most of the titles that I choose for my paintings have to do with romantic longing. And sometimes I'll use, snippets of poetry that I've read. Sometimes I'll make poems up. This one was actually from Paulo Neruda, and it was a personal message for me. It was something that my current fiance had sent in a message the day before, like right prior to our first kiss. So it was a personal meaning to me.
Oh, wonderful. That's so nice that you have that connection, and so interesting to hear the backstory on all of that. Each of you had your own methodology and system that you applied to painting at the residency. Caitlin, I remember you made your own panels. Can you tell me about that process? And also tell me what you hope to gain from painting at the residency?
Yeah, that first year I did make my own panels. I am used to making my own panels in my studio at home, where I use traditional gesso, which is a surface I really like to paint on because it's nice and smooth and accepts the paint really well. And so I was trying to do that out in Colorado outside. And that did not work well. It warped quite a bit, so I would not recommend it. And I also like to I took a lot of Mylar out, which is also a similar smooth surface. So what was the second part of your question?
I was just going to say, I just want to comment on the Mylar, because I think that's something that you use in studio as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't found a great way to mount it for professional viewing. So I enjoy painting on it, but it's more of a like, I can paint and be free and not worry that it's going to turn into anything, because I just enjoy painting on it. But I don't want to bother with figuring out how to mount it. I know people have, but I haven't gotten that far yet. So
yeah, it's good to have something that you can just experiment with. And I think those panels were also an interesting experiment. The second part of that question was what you hope to gain from painting at the residency.
Just like kind of what Fabrizio was talking about last week, it's kind of just taking in that information. Painting, I do in my studio, I paint a lot from photograph, compiling different things together. And so it's just getting a lot of information of painting outside with the light and watching it change. And just getting information and getting,
that you later take into your studio?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, cool. So your imagery seems so dreamlike and imaginative, but I definitely recognize elements of the Colorado landscape and topics related to our camping experience, like your painting, Bear I Am Afraid Of, which I have to really laugh at that title. It's in the exhibition. Can you talk about how you developed that particular painting?
Yeah, while I was out there, I was really interested in the topography of the land, all these like rolling hills and mountains. It's a landscape that I'm, not really used to. So I started doing these kind of cross contour lines, as you can see in this slide here. And then, at first I started with the red kind of hills in the distance, and then I started painting the green, the hills closer. And I normally paint in this way where I match color exactly to a photo, so I can get that distance and be able to really expressively put on brush strokes, and not really have to worry about being so technical, but being able to get that expression out and have the color to get that the distance that I want to display. So I started making these colors where I'm mixing and then not fully mixing. So I have that kind of stripe on my palette knife. And then I went in and I used my palette knife to make those lines like in a Dürer drawing with those cross contour lines. And so then I painted the bear. And that was also like getting that form of the bear using that new technique of getting that fur and that form to come out towards you. So I think there's a close-up of the fur somewhere.
There you go. Oh,
Here's another one. Oh, there it is. So you can really see like how I kind of layered things in.
Yeah, wonderful to see that close up, and wonderful to hear about your process. Thanks so much.
And the other side of the process is the composition and how I decide what I'm going to paint. So a lot of times I'll just paint a landscape. But then sometimes I go further, and like in this one, I added the bear, and then I needed, was a floating bear. I needed to put a hole, and then came the rainbow, and then came the flowers. So I don't really know what I'm going to do until I see it on the canvas. I have an idea at first, and then I add to it.
Interesting. So very much in process.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, cool. Kirsten, I remember you immediately got down to work and found an ideal spot right away. You picked a really great spot too. I remember I was thinking, oh my God, I love that spot. You mentioned something about a group of artists that you regularly camped and painted with. Can you tell me about that and how that practice is integrated in your regular art routine?
Yeah, I love the area where the residency takes place. It's actually only about an hour from where I live, so I'm pretty familiar with that. That's like our default camping spot.
Oh, okay.
So I love the Red Feather Lakes area, and I know they have these like beautiful swaths of flowers and beautiful groves of trees with the ponderosa pine and the lodgepole pine up there. It's just gorgeous. So I spent a lot of time just sort of lounging around in the fields there and doing a little bit of plein air painting. Did a couple sort of big sky paintings like I like to do, but that was one of the first pieces right there that I really enjoyed doing. But within my practice, this was actually pretty similar to something I already was doing. There's a beautiful system of huts that are in Colorado. It's called the 10th Mountain Division huts. And there's I don't know, probably about 30 of them spread out along about 300 miles of trail in Colorado. And they were originally created during World War II by the Army as a way that the Army would train shooting and skiing skills in terrain that was similar to what they would encounter in Europe. So now they're available to rent. And so all of my plein air buddies, we would get together, we would rent one of these places, and we'd do the same kind of thing that we did at the residency, where we would go out, we'd find our beautiful spot, and then we'd come back and we'd have a beautiful sharing and critique time. And as you can see there, they're available year round. So sometimes we would hike in with snowshoes and dragging a sled with all of our wine and our art supplies. And then other times in the summer, it was just like an easy hike up the hill to a beautiful location.
Sounds amazing. And I love the art crit part, because that really relates to the Artists Off Grid residency too, that we had those crits afterwards, and it was such a beneficial amount of time to just really reflect on outside of what we were actually thinking of our own work and get input from other artists. That must be a really wonderful experience for you.
I agree. You know, so much of our time is often spent just alone in the studio. So any chance that you get to really get out there and, I don't know, have a conversation with other artists and get some ideas bounced off of each other, it's always a great experience.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for sharing that. Hannah, when you arrived at the campsite, you had an exhibition that you were preparing for. So rather than paint from nature, you had imagery that you were already working from. How did the experience of being at the residency influence and inform your painting, even though you were using photo references? And also, can you speak to your process? I was really impressed with how you created an outdoor studio setup and your level of focus and attention to detail.
Thank you. Yeah, so I didn't have any outdoor painting experience prior to this. I didn't have any plein air experience or anything like that. And I was working on an exhibition, so I had a deadline of some paintings that I needed to get done. So I basically just drug my indoor studio outside. One of the fellow artists, Patricia, lent me her easel. So I used her outdoor easel. And I just set up in a shady spot, and I printed out my photos. Typically, I will use an iPad or a computer screen to look at my photo reference, and that allows me to zoom in to see the detail. But in this case, I just printed out a photo and worked from that. So really, the subject matter that I was painting at the time wasn't so much influenced, but the paintings that I made following the residency were influenced by that, and by photos that I took there, and then the photos following.
Okay, great. Wow, how interesting. I loved working at the shed underneath the decking and seeing how focused you were with your very intricate work. Caitlin, how did you find the time to create during the residency while running it, interacting with the residents, and watching over your kid? And how did having a limited amount of time to paint influence how and what you painted?
Well, I did have quite a bit of help. The first year, it was far less help, but I did, my husband was there, and then for a few days I would take her to her grandparents who lived in the Denver area, and I'd come back and paint for a few days on my own with all the residents. So the second year I had kind of worked it out where my husband would stay a little bit longer. My parents had come out, and she also spent some time at her grandparents, and also she spent some time at the residency with just me and the other artists. So when I did paint, I really had to just immediately get to work when I did have the chance. And then I also just, running the residency was really just really fun because I got to see what everyone else was doing.
Yeah, you were great about interacting with us and coming around and asking what we were doing, and having that ongoing discussion with you and the rest of the artists I found really beneficial. Thanks for sharing how you put all that together. Kirsten, the artwork that you shared with me that you created after the residency, specifically for the Artists Off the Grid show, are psychological reflection from the experience. Can you tell me more about that process and your resulting imagery? And also in particular, can you talk about your painting that is the modern interpretation of David and Goliath?
Yeah, while I was there, I did all plein air studies. But when I got back into the studio, I really was thinking about what a beautiful opportunity this particular residency was, because it was off the grid. And so I really just have been thinking about that, how I think there's been a direct relationship between how my focus in my studio has really decreased as technology consumption has increased. And there's this crazy making around that. So I created these two figurative paintings that sort of show that angst of the technological world. So these two paintings called Untethered 1 and 2 here. And I've been using my backpacking trips as a mental reset button, really recognizing that that's, I guess, a pain point for me in my studio. So those were the first two pieces. And then the third one that I did was the David and Goliath interpretation. I used that local landscape, some of the local flora and fauna that we have there in the bottom. And then I really like having an open-ended concept in my artwork, really hinting at a story, but leaving it open to interpretation. So I was particularly drawn to the David and Goliath theme with this seemingly insurmountable challenge sort of out of frame here. You can sort of interpret at will what that is for you. And especially now, I'm looking at this painting again with completely new eyes. We all have this common invisible enemy now with the coronavirus. And I'm just seeing this piece in a whole new light. But I just keep thinking that everyone loves a good comeback story, right?
That's right. That's right, where the hero wins, and the
Yes.
the hero and the heroine being artists. Yay!
Yes.
All of us, actually. All of us. So hopefully we're all going to come back from this and be better for it. At least, well, I think, you know, we will be stronger in some ways from the experience. But it is a tricky one to maneuver right now. Hannah, you're a photorealist painter, but also a massage therapist. How do you manage your practice as a therapist and as a painter? And how do you find balance? And what did you take away from the residency, and how has it affected the work you created following it? So if you could answer the first part.
Sure. So like a lot of people, I have a day job that supports my habit. And it's a kind of a time consuming, the painting process. So I try to squeeze in about 3 hours of painting a day. And I can do that either before or after work. And then I try to condense my appointments into chunks of time so that my attention isn't scattered just by transitioning and travel time. And then as far as what I took away from the residency, I really, I went to this residency because I felt the desire to spend more time in nature. I feel like I'm really busy, you know, just in between massaging and painting. And so this was an opportunity to get out more. And because I had a deadline and an end goal, there was more of a sense of urgency where, you know, sometimes I might feel guilty just taking a walk. But in this case, I was like, no, I have work to do. So I have an excuse for why I need to be out, you know, just taking in some fresh air and, you know, looking at flowers. And a lot of the photos that I took are actually on the trail right outside of my office.
Oh.
I was amazed to find just how many wildflowers there are out there. And also, it just, like I said, it gave me an awareness of the interconnectedness of the insects and the flowers and the symbiotic relationship that was really interesting to me. And so in taking these photos, you know, I had to pay attention to when things were blooming and you know, one of the flowers, it only opens in the evening, which is really interesting. And then I also noticed, you know, certain times of the day the bees are more active. And so just overall, it gave me a feeling of connectedness to nature. And I really appreciated that.
Wow, that's awesome. I'm glad you took that away from the experience. And it's wow, that's such a beautiful painting up right now with the turtle. That's really lovely. I love seeing the close-ups of those insects, and it kind of reminded me of the Dutch master paintings of flowers and all those insects that you can find in the bouquets. So that was amazing. Just finding, I'm seeing through your work also like a macro lens of how I look at things too now. So that's also a wonderful experience. I want to ask Caitlin and Kirsten as well. Can you answer the same question? What have you taken away from the residency, and how has it affected the work you created following it? I'm going to start with Kirsten.
Yeah. Like Hannah, I'm also a realist painter, and I try and combine what I learned from all of those plein air studies along with the photo reference that I use in the studio. So I really feel like the lens of the eye is different than the lens of a camera. And really, when I'm using strictly photo reference, I don't feel like I have the full spectrum of color that you can understand when you work with direct observation. So I've really taken those studies and combined them with photo reference, and I really feel like I have a better accuracy of color now in my studio work. And then the other change that I've had, I was listening to a TED Talk recently by, I think the guy's name is Julian Treasure, and he speaks a lot about the psychology of sound. And so he was talking about how we have this sort of calming feeling that comes around when we hear bird noises, because think about like when there's a storm and everything goes really quiet and eerie, you know, and there's like this unsettling feeling. But then as soon as the sun comes out again, all the birds sing, and then we know that all's right in the world. So he was actually suggesting to play bird soundtracks while you work and see if it affects you. And so I've been, instead of always like running out and going backpacking and trying to escape and get my mental reset button, I was like, what if I try and bring nature back into the studio? So I've really been actually playing like these soundtracks of birds that I found on Spotify, and it's been really wonderful, actually. I think it's really brought a focus back to my studio practice that wasn't there before.
Oh, how exciting that you're bringing the outdoors indoors. I mean, yeah, I would never have thought to do that off the top of my head. But in fact, I was down at Van Cortlandt recently. Van Cortlandt Park is right here in the Bronx. And I was looking at the landscape and hearing the birds. And I remembered you had mentioned something about this TED Talk, and it just immediately I was like, oh, right. So
Feel
then
better, right? Yeah.
and then I started filming it, and I was like, oh God, I got to listen to this later. And then I shared it with everybody on Facebook too, because I just feel like we all need a bit of that kind of piece from nature right now. So that's awesome to hear that. Caitlin, can you answer the same question?
Sure.
Want me to repeat?
No, from my experience, is a bit of a layered experience learning how to run my own residency, and learning how to get artists to come together and give me all the information I need from them. Just kind of learning how to do that well-crafted email so I can get everyone to do what I need. And then
You were excellent at that, by the way, I just want to say. It's like chasing cats sometimes.
Yeah. But everybody was really great. I really can't complain about anybody, really. And I have to say that I am so happy with the way the show turned out. It's just better than I had expected. So I really appreciate everyone's work on that. And then for my work, going back in the studio, I really, like when I was out there, I did have to paint pretty quickly and sit down with it. When we were out there, we had to economize our time, and as well as the water and, our things and food. So bringing back that kind of economy of how I work, is kind of what I still do today. I mean, when we first got back, I was really conserving my water, like washing my dishes in a special way. I know that you still do that, and I wish I did, but I mean, I definitely conserve a lot more than I had before from that experience. But really, just taking back to the studio and just being more efficient with my work.
Cool. Yeah, I thought you were really amazing the way you blocked out a period. You determinedly found a period of time where you could get work done, even though it wasn't a lot of time. You got so much done in such a short period of time. I was really impressed with that.
Oh, thanks, Kim.
And not just work, but good work. I really enjoyed what you did. So I wanted to ask also, how have you all been affected by and dealt with this pandemic that we're in right now? And did your experience at the residency teach you anything about how to deal with our current state of affairs? I'm going to ask Hannah first. What is your reaction to that question?
I feel like I learned some patience and took away a feeling of hope from the residency. I feel like this pandemic is just a season, and following the residency, I needed to get these wildflower photos, but it actually started snowing in October. So a lot of the nature walks that I spent were in the winter, or felt like winter, or it was very barren for many months. And I spent a long time just walking and waiting and wondering if I would ever get the photos that I needed to do these paintings. But in the springtime, the variety of flowers that came was just overwhelming. And I'm really hopeful that the same thing will happen after this pandemic passes, that we'll all experience a sense of renewal and a rebirth of sorts.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that concept, conceptually and in real time. I mean, definitely, I feel like spring does kind of give you that sense of hope and renewal for sure. But I love that you're taking that into your perspective on all of this. Kirsten, can you answer the same question?
Yeah, well, I didn't know anyone when I showed up to the residency. So often in those kinds of new situations, I ask myself, what do people need and what do I have to offer? So I really relied on my backpacking experience and recognized that there were a lot of people from New York and that sort of thing that may not be familiar with the landscape. So I set up I helped people set up their camp stoves and taught them about some campfire safety and leave no trace ethics and things like that I know from my experience.
Yeah, I really loved, actually, by the way, hearing about all that. That was great.
Yeah, well, I think with you, Kim, in particular, I saw you setting up your tent, and we have a problem with beetle kill out here where a lot of the trees are dead, but they're still standing up, and we call them widow makers because a strong wind can just blow them right over. And you were setting up your tent right under one. I was like, I don't know her, but I'm going to run over and just introduce myself and do a quick little teachable moment, as my mom would say. Yeah, but I was traveling when all of this happened, and I was overseas and traveling through Morocco and in Las Palmas in Spain. So I have a lot of studies from that time that got cut a little bit short that I'll be working on in the studio.
Okay, great.
And then I'm also just realizing that, gosh, this is one of those experiences that's really just one of the greatest examples of altruism I've ever seen in my lifetime. And so I participated in a fundraiser on Wednesday night, along with a bunch of different musicians and artists from my community. We all came together to raise money for Neighbor to Neighbor, which is a great nonprofit here in Northern Colorado that helps immediate need, financial need for people that have lost their job and are facing homelessness. So we raised over 13 grand with all of these artists coming together just with this incredible show. Yeah. And I've just seen that over and over again, all of these incredible ways that artists are just asking that same question, like, what do people need and what do I have to offer? And so I've just seen it. I think like everybody would be going crazy right now without the arts. You know, what is everybody doing right now stuck at home? They're reading books, they are taking in art, they're watching theater, videos, movies, and kids crafts, and just all of this. Like, we would all be losing our minds, more so, I guess, without the arts. So if anything, I think this has really just shown just that great level of altruism, and then also the importance of the arts for everyone. Yeah.
That's great. I love hearing about what you've participated in, but I can only cheer on about the arts as well. I think that it's ultimately very important for our sense of community and our sanity. And Caitlin, can you please also answer that question?
Well, my story is pretty different. I've just kind of started to get the handle on homeschooling. That's a big big part of what I've been kind of tackling. I've been doing, I don't have a ton of time. I mean, getting these gallery talks kind of going, and just doing these little drawings. I have not been allowed to go into my studio. The building is closed.
Oh, like so many artist studios are closed right now.
Yeah, so I've just kind of been working on these little animal drawings where I'm using the contour, that cross contour thing I was working in painting, but doing it with going back and doing it with pen. And just finding that kind of the topography of an animal.
I love that bear. Every time I see it, I just think about our experience there and how terrified I was of bears.
Nobody actually saw any bears.
We didn't see a single one.
There was no evidence of bears near us. We were pretty safe.
Only my imagination.
Yeah, and we were using some good bear safety as well.
We kept safe. That's true.
Yeah.
Thanks to Kirsten's knowledge and your knowledge about that, we were really prepared for that. So, and also Lisa Lebowski had a lot of
Yes.
about that, and Jenya too, because they'd also been camping.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's really interesting about how homeschooling has really affected you. And
Yeah, I'm just taking it one day at a time, and that's just doing my best.
that's all we can do right now. But I love how dedicated you are in educating your kid every day at home. So that's really impressive to me. So you're one of my heroines. What are your plans for the future with your work? And are you working on any projects or paintings currently that we can look forward to besides the wonderful artworks that all of you have included in the Artists Off the Grid exhibition at Abend? Kirsten, can you answer that question?
Yeah, well, things I think for like a lot of different artists rapidly changed for me. I had 4 different shows and an art festival that all were canceled last minute and postponed until the fall. So this is actually from Catatonic, one of the online shows that Abend is doing, and they are still an open gallery that is open online. So I encourage people to still go to abend.com, see all the amazing artwork that's there. They're still selling artwork all around the world, and are able to ship and show in that way. So even though their physical location is closed, they are still very active and have done a wonderful job promoting this show and future shows too. So I'd encourage people to do that. But as far as future plans for me, I was really thinking I'd like to take this opportunity to work on teaching online. So I've been sort of doing all of the research around that and realizing, yeah, I've got 20 years of painting experience I can really put out there for the world. So that's my next big step right there.
Awesome. I'll look forward to hearing more about that for sure. Hannah, can you tell us what's coming up for you, and besides the show that we're actually in right now that is online? And thank you very much, Kirsten, for shouting out Abend.
Yeah. So my next big project is a solo show planned for August 2021. It seems like a ways off, but I'm a really slow painter. So when I'm going full time, the most I can do is about a painting a month is my average. And I'm just going to be doing some more fruit. You can see behind me too, I'm working on a piece. There's a in progress image of just some cherries in a glass bowl. But yeah, I'll be slowly painting away.
That's great. That's a bigger painting than I saw you working on. That's great. That's gonna. I'm knowing how meticulous you are and how you work. I feel like that's gonna take up a good amount of your time working on that.
Thank you. Yeah, I love doing large scale, and then also the miniatures are really fun too. So.
Awesome. Caitlin?
I think right now just working on those little animal drawings. And then looking forward to getting back into the studio, which I hope will be soon.
Yeah, that's soon too. And then also, when's the next Artists Off Grid?
Oh, yes, thank you, Kim. That will be, we're not going this summer, but we will be going again in 2021 in the summer. And it's in July, where the weather is, we've missed mosquito season, which is brutal. And we haven't hit the dry season yet, so we're still all those wonderful wildflowers in that time period that we go. So if anybody's interested, please apply. You can apply whenever you like. So yeah, I'm working towards doing that. And then eventually the land, might need to be sold. So I do plan on having the land, continuing Artists Off Grid. I've had invitations to go out to Portugal.
Great.
And eventually maybe some place out here in Massachusetts where I've just moved to in Western Mass. But I'm still working on this project, and I think it's worked out pretty well, and I think it's been a meaningful experience for me, and hopefully a meaningful experience for all the artists who join me.
Definitely, I can speak for that. That was definitely the experience for me, very meaningful and very helpful in a lot of ways. Thanks for telling me more, because I did want to know what was next with all of that. So I just want to say thanks to everyone. I loved hearing your answers almost as much as I enjoyed spending time with you at the Artists Off Grid residency. Thanks so much to Dave Etheridge and the Abend Gallery team for giving us a chance to share the experience of the residency through our art. Huge thanks to Caitlin for founding such an original residency and filling it with so many fascinating creatives. You can see the works included in the exhibition from all the artists, and I'm just going to list them here. We've just spoken to all of them throughout these talks, and you can go back and look at the previous talks. Caitlin, obviously, Karis Carmichael-Braun, who is here taking care of our imagery. Thank you so much, Karis. Jenya Chernoff, Lindsay Dunnigan, Ivy Hickam, Lisa Lebowski, Patricia McEnroy, sorry. Hannah Moghbel, who's right here, Kirsten Savage, Fabricio Suarez, and myself. You can see all of our work on the gallery website, Abend Gallery, ABENDGALLERY.com, and you can reach out to the gallery for any inquiries at 303-355-0950. I want to say thank you too to our joining the audience that's joined us both on Facebook and here online on Zoom. And this is Kim Power of Power Art Projects signing off. Be well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.